Give us a concrete example of how this has been, for example, an example of an ill-structured problem you've encountered with the the engineering students, and how
well, we're trying to embed those kinds of problems more in the classroom. I mean, the majority of, for instance, mechanical and electrical engineers get paid to design. They design a part, they design a process, they design a circuit, they design something like that. And when a design problem comes along like that, the potential number of solutions is infinite. There's no way of knowing what the right or best answer is going to be. Now, engineers or other people usually engage in a set of constraint analyses where you look at the constraints under which this particular part has to. If you're designing a new circuit for an automobile or something, well, okay, this circuit's got to operate underneath the hood where you've got wild temperature fluctuations and wild environmental conditions, very diverse environmental conditions with a lot of vibrations, and it's got to interconnect with those other parts and so on and so forth. And those constraints will go a long way to helping you narrow what we call the problem space down into a finite number of potential solutions. Most designers then go to some sort of an artifact, a model, a prototype, or whatever, which again begins with many possible options, but ultimately the engineer's got to narrow that design down to a single kind of a solution, which they believe, based on the evidence and optimization routines, work the best. But the same can be said for in philosophy. The world is full of philosophical problems. The world is full of ethical problems. One of the most interesting social dilemmas, in fact, which is a very ill-structured form of problem, is how do we deal with the same-sex marriage issue? It's a dilemma because it will never be resolved. I mean, it can be resolved through force, as the Missouri legislature has, by saying thou shalt not. But it's not going to make the desire and the need and the controversy go away. It's still going to be there. And so those are some of the kinds of personal dilemmas that we face or social dilemmas we face in our everyday lives, in which you have to take positions. Football team, a lot of problems. Quarterback who's out there solves what I call strategic performance problems. You've got to set strategies, but you've got to exercise and use various tactics, and you got to do it in real time, on the fly. You can't stop and think about, let's see, should I? So problems pervade our lives, our personal lives, our workplace lives, and so on. And most of those problems are really dissimilar to the kinds of problems that we learn to solve in school. There's been an assumption for a long time that, well, okay, if we learn to solve these well-structured problems in the classroom, that skill will transfer to solving everyday problems, and the research that we've done over a number of years pretty much clearly shows that's just not the case. The nature of the cognitive processes and the affective factors that go into making those or solving those problems really are quite different. I look at the world as an applied cognitive psychologist, so I look primarily at what kinds of cognitive processes people have to use to be able to solve different kinds of problems. And where my work has diverged from virtually all of the traditional problem-solving literature is that I argue there are different kinds of problems. And I mean, decision-making problems versus case analysis problems versus design problems versus troubleshooting problems. And each of those kinds of problems requires problem solvers to think in a somewhat different way. Okay. Additionally, problems vary in context. The same kind of problem in one context may be solved quite differently in another. People working for Intel solve problems differently than people working for IBM. The social, cultural, organizational constraints that pervade that workplace just necessitate a different approach to solving problems. What you can do and what you can't do. What you can get away with, what you can't get away with.